Hello and welcome to Colred Plays Raid Shadow Legends. I am Colred. Thanks for being here. In today's video, we will be covering my plan for the Strategos Islin Fragment Event. Now, it just launched today. The calendar is live, so we can now check out what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. And whether you're a new player and you have never done a fusion before, or whether you're a veteran of several fusion events, the best path to success is always taking a look early at the calendar and sort of planning ahead, seeing what it's going to take in terms of resources and time, seeing where you can get extra value, whether you can double dip, triple dip, quadruple dip on various events and tournaments. So the first step is to take a look at that calendar, and that's what we're going to do right now. Okay, so when I first look at any fragment or fusion event calendar, I'm always looking for where the extra fragments come from. Now, I'm just going to move myself over a little bit, and you can see that down here on the bottom left, it tells us the total number of fragments. And there are 20 additional fragments, those fragments in green, from tournament leaderboards. And if I look up here, there is a champion training tournament. It's actually going on right now. And then there is a champion chase tournament that goes on later in the fusion. Now, it says there are 10 extra fragments in each of these, but in order to get these fragments, you need to come in either first or second place in the tournament, and you can only get 5 fragments. Each place is awarded 5 fragments. So there aren't actually 20 extra fragments available to you. There are only 10 available to you. And it's very difficult. It's only going to be 1 out of 100 people who can get those extra fragments. So when we create our plan, we're going to create our plan like these don't exist. However, there's something to note about these 20 extra fragments, which is that typically there are only 15 extra fragments. So there's a total, you need 100 fragments. There are a total of 130, and usually there are 15 from tournament leaderboards, and then there are 15 from the events and tournaments. Now, what that allows you to do, or has allowed you to do in the past, is skip a 15-point event or tournament. So this summon rush here is worth 15 points. The champion chase we were just talking about up here is also worth 15 points. So in the past, we've been able to skip one of these events and just focus on the other. And that's important because these both require shards. Now, in this particular case, we will not be able to skip both event or one of the events. We can't skip either event. We're going to have to do at least part of both events. So typically the way these work is there will be a 5 fragment reward, and then there will be a 10 fragment reward. So whether it's on the summon rush or the champion chase, you're going to have to get at least the 5 fragments on both of these events. And then on one of these events, you're going to have to get the full 15. So that is a new tweak. The good news is it doesn't seem like there is any inflation for this fragment event. The point totals are consistent with the last 2 fusions, actually last 4 fusions or so. So yeah, I'm not too worried about the point totals creeping up anymore. Now, obviously, we only have these 3 tournaments and events that are available to check out today: the Fire Knight tournament, the Champion Training tournament, and the Artifact Enhancement event. But all of those point totals are consistent with the last 4 fusions. So it doesn't look like that inflation is continuing to rise, and we're at a steady level. Now, the level is high. It's much higher than it used to be. These fragment and fusion events have been difficult, especially the Dungeon Divers events. The Dungeon Divers events have been very tricky. The Artifact Enhancement events are more silver than they used to be. They used to be around 15 million silver per event. Now they're about 20 million silver per event. So that's going to stay the same. But in general, if you've been able to successfully complete the last few fusion or fragment events, then this one should be at about the same difficulty level. Okay, so let's start talking about our actual plan. Because Dungeon Divers events are the most difficult in the entire fragment event, you want to focus on those, and you want to make sure that you're getting value for those. Now, for the Fire Knight tournament, you will need around 2k energy, and that is going to be also true for the Spider, Dragon, and Ice Golem tournaments. And for the Dungeon Divers event, you're going to need around 5,000 energy. Again, it depends how efficient you are, what stages you're farming. Also, if you happen to get lucky with your drop rates and so on and so forth. But you want to think about 5,000 energy for a Dungeon Divers event. What that means is, because this Dungeon Divers event lines up with the Fire Knight tournament, you want to spend all 2,000 energy on the Fire Knight tournament within the window for the Dungeon Divers event. Don't spend any energy in front of the Dungeon Divers event. Don't do it. Don't get into Fire Knight early and get it done. You don't want to, that's just going to be throwing away energy. Unless you have a ton of extra energy, you want to make sure that you do that entire 2K of the Fire Knight tournament inside the Dungeon Divers event. Now, additionally, you're going to get Spider Tournament to line up with this Dungeon Divers event as well. So again, you're going to want to spend your 2K in the Spider Tournament entirely within that Dungeon Divers event. Now, even though it shows on the calendar that Sunday and Monday are for the Spider Tournament and Sunday and Monday are for the Dungeon Divers event, we don't know how much overlap that time is actually going to be. If the Spider Tournament comes online at 10 p.m. on Sunday night and the Dungeon Divers closes at 5 a.m. on Monday morning, there's going to be almost no overlap there. So make sure you look at the Dungeon Divers timer and the Spider Tournament timer. Remember, you get a 24-hour warning about when it's going to launch. So make sure you look at that to see how much time you actually have to overlap that Spider Tournament with that Dungeon Divers event. But if you can actually get that full 4K energy from the Fire Knight tournament and the Spider Tournament into the Dungeon Divers, that means you only need 1,000 additional energy for that Dungeon Divers event. And if you put that full 1,000 energy into champion training, just running your champions through campaign, then you can literally never waste energy for Dungeon Divers event. So you get 2,000 into Fire Knight, 1,000 into campaign, and 2,000 into Spider, and that covers your Dungeon Divers entirely. Okay, now it may be a little bit more than 1K in the champion training tournament because you don't quite get the same points from campaign as you do from the dungeons. So Fire Knight and Spider will be a little bit better return there, but it might be an extra 300 or 500 energy in the campaign, and that's just going to help you with that champion training tournament. Now we have to consider the fact that there are 3 Dungeon Divers events. So, one of the things that you consider here is that the Spider Tournament also overlaps the second Dungeon Divers. So if you wanted to put a little bit of extra energy into the champion training tournament instead of 1K, let's say you wanted to do 2 or 3K into the champion training tournament during the first Dungeon Divers, then you could potentially do that and save some of the Spider Tournament energy for this second Dungeon Divers event. So let's say you save the 1K worth of energy there. You could also do that. If you don't, you will be using extra energy somewhere along the lines because this Dragon Tournament is again 2K energy, and that will be to the end of this Dungeon Divers event. And then the Ice Golem and the final Dungeon Divers event overlap. And that means the 2K here that's going in is part of the 2K for the Dungeon Divers event. But remember, you need 5,000 energy for each Dungeon Divers event. So while the first one can be super efficient, the second and third ones are not going to be as efficient. You're going to want to take advantage of the champion training event when it's in conjunction with the Dungeon Divers event to get some extra efficiency there, to get some extra, value for your energy. But yeah, it's going to be a little bit tricky with Dungeon Divers event 2 and 3. Now, if you happen to go for the full Summon Rush and the full Champion Chase tournament, then the nice thing is you're going to have those 10 extra fragments, and you can literally say, I'm not doing Dungeon Divers 2 or 3. I would still highly recommend you do Dungeon Divers 1 because that's going to be super efficient in terms of energy usage. But if you decide to pull a few extra shards in the Summon Rush, or you get a little bit lucky in the Champion Chase and you happen to hit a couple of legendaries, then you can potentially opt out of a Dungeon Divers event. Likewise, if you win one of your tournaments, I would highly recommend opting out of the Dungeon Divers event because the Dungeon Divers event is something that just requires a lot of time and energy. So even if you have the energy, you still have to play the game for many, many hours a day, which can be tricky. So, consider if you have any extra fragments, I would highly recommend opting out of those. Unless you're short on silver. If you're really short on silver, you could consider opting out of an artifact enhancement event. Speaking of the artifact enhancement events, like we're saying, they're about 20 million silver each. So that means you're looking at 60 million silver for the entire event. Remember, you're going to be getting a ton of silver during the tournaments, during the champion training tournaments, the Fire Knight tournament, the Spider tournament. You're going to be having silver flow into your account. But you do have to consider the fact that total, you're going to need about 60 million. I usually try to save up half of that before the event starts. So 25 to 30 million is usually where I want to be. And I think on my main account, I'm right there. I'm at like 28 million. So I feel pretty comfortable with these artifact enhancement events. But that is something to take note of. If you have, say, 5 or 10 million here, you're going to have to probably go after some extra silver or do a gear cleanse or forge a bunch of gear in the forge and sell that for silver. So there are a lot of ways you can get silver relatively quickly if you need it, but you're still going to need a total of about 60 million silver, which is quite a bit. The 2 classic arena takedowns, I'm not terribly worried about. I think if you are in gold arena, this is basically going to be covered by your normal arena tokens like usage. So if you're just doing your normal arena battles, you'll cover these. These tend to be the easiest. Another thing to consider is in terms of time investment. If you are using the champion training method that the community recommends, that content creators recommend, you can do the champion training tournaments relatively quickly. It's good to set up a lot of food champions early in the event, or if you've even done that before the event starts, you're in good shape. So the 2 champion training, the 1 tournament and the event, don't take a ton of extra time. Likewise, the summon rush and the champion chase don't take a lot of extra time. And even the artifact enhancement events don't take a lot of time. So the time commitment really comes into the dungeon divers and the tournaments. So you want to make sure that you're watching that, especially because the last days you have a dungeon divers event and you have an ice golem tournament. So during the last 3 or 4 days of this fragment event, it's going to be time intensive. So make sure you have enough play time late in the event to be able to complete this. The worst thing is to get 90, 95 fragments and then run out of time on your last dungeon divers and not be able to do that and miss the fusion that way. So one last thing to consider is the number of shards that you have available to you. So for the summon rush, typically you're going to need 6 or 7 sacred shards, or the equivalent in terms of points. A sacred shard is 500 points. So in order to complete the whole thing, you'd probably need 7 sacred shards. For the champion chase tournament, it's going to be a lot different because you can get points from champions that come from anywhere, whether that's from campaign or fragment events. If you've got a Doom Tower champion that you've collected, you can pull them during this. Likewise, if you're pulling from shards, it depends on if you hit. So if you hit on a legendary, or if let's say you hit on a void legendary, that's I think 650 points. Whereas if you hit on a void rare, that's only 50 points. So this is the more variable of the 2, and it's harder to know how many shards you need for the champion chase tournament. I would typically say in terms of the distribution, you probably want 2 or 3 sacred shards to be able to pull here just to lock down those points. And then you're looking at maybe 100 to 120 ancient shards. If you're not pulling voids, if you are pulling voids, then however many voids you have, that's going to change the point total quite a bit. So you do need a bunch of shards there. And then remember, you're going to need those 5 or 6, maybe even 7 sacred shards for the summon rush here early on. So we're looking at somewhere around, say, 9 or 10 sacreds plus maybe 100 ancients. And again, the voids will change that. I'm not going to have a lot of voids. We just had the void 2 times event. I might have 10 voids. So that's going to give me a guaranteed 500 points. But so shards are going to be a little bit tricky in this overall fragment event. And that's one of the things that could cause you to say, I'm going to bail out on this one. I don't have the shards, and I don't want to waste all the other resources on all the other events and play for 12 days and then come up short during that champion chase tournament. Remember, you do have time for that champion chase tournament to collect more shards from your clan boss rewards or from any other locations in the game where you can farm. If you're not sure about where to get free shards, I have a video that you can watch that outlines every single free shard that's available in the game. So you can go and watch that video, and that may help you plan for whether or not you can go after this champion chase tournament, which may be the deciding factor in whether or not you go after Strategos Islin. Okay, so that is it for the planning phase here with the calendar. I would say one thing additionally that you want to watch out for is you could wait until tomorrow when the events drop on Friday to check out the point totals for the Summon Rush and the Dungeon Divers event before you make your decision about going in on this fragment event or not. So if the point totals seem reasonable and within your reach, then you could say, yes, I'm going to commit. And if they don't seem reasonable, then you can say, okay, I'm going to step out of this one. I'm going to take a pass and save my resources. Because today on Thursday, it's not really super important that you get started on anything. The Dungeon Divers event is where you want to start burning your energy in the Fire Knight tournament and the Champion Training tournament and so on and so forth. And you don't need to do the Artifact Enhancement event at all if you're not going for the Fusion. So wait until tomorrow to make your call, unless you're 100% sure you're in, and then you can decide what to do. But still, I think it's more efficient to wait till tomorrow to start burning your energy for that Dungeon Divers event. Now, there is one last thing that's a little bit weird, and I need your help with this because I have a question that I haven't been able to find an answer to about Fusion events, and it is entirely based around my new account. So let's go take a look at that account, and I'll show you what I mean. So here is my new account. It's only 9 or 10 days old, and I looked at the point totals, and I saw that the point totals were rather low. Only 2,000 points for the first 5 fragments, and only 3,700 points for the next 5 fragments. Now, this is a lot lower than it would be on my main account. And I went and checked my main account, and in fact, the point totals over there are significantly higher. So then I checked the next tournament. So here I am in the Fire Knight tournament, and you can see the 5 fragments are available for 950 points instead of the 2,250 that I'm experiencing on my main account. So there is some kind of new account benefit that we're receiving, that we're getting lower point totals. Now, my question to you is, how long does this last? I don't know why this is here, and I don't know how long it lasts for a new account. Now, I have several thoughts on the issue, but I haven't been able to actually find an answer online anywhere. My first thought is that it's linked to the level of my account. I am level 38. Now, if it switches at level 40, and all of a sudden at level 40, I'll get all the events and tournaments at the normal level, then there's no way I can do this this fragment event on this account. However, if it doesn't switch until, say, 50, then I could certainly make an attempt at this champion, and he would be a great progression champion for this brand new account. Now, I think it would be very difficult for me to pull this off, even with the lower point totals, but in order to make a judgment about whether or not I should try, I need to know what's going to happen. So does anybody out there know, does this change at level 40? Does it change at level 50? Or is this something where, like, the very first Fusion event on a new account, regardless of, you know, what level you are, you always get lower point totals, and then on the second event it goes up? What's the deal? I've never actually investigated this before. I've never really looked at this before, and it's only because I have a brand new account that I even noticed, because I was looking into it on the, like, I was playing 2 accounts and I was just looking at the tournament on the wrong account. So I would love an answer. If anybody's experienced this and knows the answer, let me know, and then I will share it with the community in my Discord. I'll put an announcement out. Maybe I'll put it in my next video as well. So I appreciate you trying to help me out with that and finding an answer to that question. Okay, that is it for our fragment event plan. Again, one of the things to pay attention to as you progress through this event is where you are investing your time, not just your in-game resources. Because if you don't have the time to accomplish, like, the Dungeon Divers events, you just can't play that long. Like, if you have a business trip, or if you have a big family event, or if you're going on holiday or something like that is happening, that might prevent you from getting just 5 fragments. And if you miss 5 fragments, that might be enough for you to fail the event. So think about your time as well as your resources. And then again, like I said, I think tomorrow is the day to make the call. All right, good luck to all of you out there who are going for Strategos Islin. And if you are passing on this event, that's awesome too. Enjoy the restful 2 weeks while the rest of us stress out. Thanks so much for being here. I've been Cole Red. I will see you in another video very soon.